today I wanted to do a little bit of a different style of review because I wanted to talk a little bit about my favorite book and then a little bit about the spiritual successor that I found for it this month, which was not something I ever expected. This has been my favorite book since I was at least 12, right around the age when I really discovered Diana Wynne Jones, and this is the one that tops it all for me, and I've loved it for so long and never found anything that quite gave me the feel of it. And then along came The Trouble with Goats and Sheep, which I picked up for Becca's Bookopoly-thon, and even though they're not exactly the same thing because this is more contemporary, more of just a general mystery, and this is from the same time period, honestly, so still kind of contemporary, but has a lot of fantastical and magical elements. You wouldn't think that they'd be super related, but they feel very related to me, so that's what we're going to talk about today. So, Fire and Hemlock is a sort of coming-of-age story. We feature Polly, our main character, who discovers she has a double set of memories. So she goes and takes a look back at her childhood and tries to remember what's going on and figure out why she has a double set of memories. Along the way, she meets a man, Mr. Thomas Lynn, and he features very heavily in that double set of memories, but not in the ones that she's been living for the last whatever number of years without realizing she had those magical other memories. So it's also kind of trying to discover him and what he was in her life. Versus, we have The Trouble with Goats and Sheep, which is also a coming-of-age type story. The main characters in this are looking for God in their town because one of their neighbors has disappeared, and they go to a sermon that talks about how being, if you find God, then you'll be okay, kind of a thing. And so they're like, we just gotta find God in the neighborhood, and then she'll come back, and everything will be okay. So, very different setups. You may wonder how they feel like spiritual successors, or this feels like a spiritual successor. Well, in the first place, if we look at the relationships that are in the story. So we've got Polly that's in Fire and Hemlock, and she's got her best friend Nina who accompanies her throughout the years, particularly in her set of memories that were forgotten. And Polly and Nina are the best of friends. Polly is kind of more timid and shy, and Nina is very outgoing and adventurous and kind of compels Polly to do things that Polly wouldn't normally otherwise do. So one of the first things that happens in the story is that Nina compels Polly to go dress up as like little priestesses, and they're wandering around in the neighborhood, and Polly thinks that Nina's gone into a house and ends up accidentally gate crashing a funeral, which is where she meets Thomas Lynn. And then we've got our main characters here in The Trouble with Goats and Sheep, and we have Grace and Tilly that are in this story. Grace is the main character, and Tilly is her best friend, and it feels like a little bit of a role reversal, like instead of following Polly, in this case we're following Nina, because Grace is the more outgoing and Tilly's a little more shy and reserved. But it's still that same sort of dynamic where one is kind of compelling the other to do things, but they're still the best of friends and have a great relationship and all of that kind of a thing. And so that's a lot of where I feel like it ends up being a spiritual successor. But I feel like, too, with like the discussions that this has about childhood, with the kids going on this search through their neighborhood to find God and things like that, it just captured childhood so perfectly and so beautifully that it felt like a real relationship, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it as well. So yeah, that's where I get a lot of those feelings that it's kind of like a spiritual successor to Fire and Hemlock for me. I also, with The Trouble with Goats and Sheep, just really loved a lot of the language and things that are going on in it. I wrote down a note of one spot in particular that I wanted to look and just kind of read aloud to be like, look at this cool writing. So let's see what we've got here. I'm gonna flip to page 99, I think, to get into this. Oops, I just lost my spot, because that's how it goes. Okay, let's try this one more time. Page 99. There we go. Okay. And I'm just going to read this off because I think the writing is beautiful. Tracing her path through the streets, he would speak as though she were walking alongside him. Before she disappeared, he never said, "I love you." Instead of saying, "I love you," he said, "Take care of yourself, and when will you be back?" Instead of saying, "I love you," he placed her umbrella at the bottom of the stairs so it wouldn't be forgotten. And in the winter, he put her gloves on the chair by the door so she would remember to pull them onto her hands before she left. Until she disappeared, this was the only way he knew how. But since she was gone, he found that the words had become untethered. They fell from his mouth in silence, certain and unashamed. They rattled under the bridge at the canal and tripped across the towpath. They waltzed around the bandstand and chased along the pavements as he walked. He thought that if he said the words often enough, she would be certain to hear them, and surely if he continued to walk, they would surely meet. Statistically, there could only be so many steps you had to take before you found someone again. Oh, beautiful, beautiful writing. And so this book just completely captured me in that sense. I might even pick up my own copy because this one's just a library one, and I definitely want to read like more of Joanna Cannon's stuff. It hit me in such a good spot. I wasn't sure what to expect from it. I picked it up at random from the library based on the Dusk Jacket description, and then had just been holding on to it for a while and was looking for a mystery to finish up Becca's Bookopoly-a-thon, readathon. And the very first thing that it says in the Dust Jacket here is part coming of age, part mystery. And I was like, sold, we'll read it. And it was such a fast read for me, which also kind of surprised me. Not that it's a super long book or anything, but other than when I was focusing so much on it for the readathon for Becca's Bookopoly, I have been having trouble just sitting down and finishing a book in a day. So that was really exciting for me to read it and find just a new kind of favorite that I really liked. And it just reminds me of my favorite, which is also a lot of fun and is something that's never happened before. But yeah, just kind of a brief review, sharing some of my thoughts on both of these. If you happen to have read either of these and have any thoughts you want to share on them, feel free to comment down below, especially if you've read Fire and Hemlock and happen to have any other books you think might be considered sort of spiritual successors to it and have some of those similar vibes. That would be great and exciting, and I'd love to hear about them. Apparently I really like coming-of-age stories and didn't quite realize it, because this has a lot of coming-of-age elements to it, especially as she's looking back on her past. And this is a lot of coming-of-age stuff too, but I think it's not only the coming-of-age stuff that's been getting me with these, but the relationship between those two characters, that you've got this great little friendship between Nina and Polly, and Nina encouraging Polly to do things, and that kind of helping to develop the story and the motivation. It was a fun way to have like an introverted character, but still have them do things outside their comfort zone because they're motivated by wanting to stay friends with their friend and do things with their friend. And kind of some of those same elements here. You've got the extrovert and the introvert, and this time we're focusing on the extrovert, but we still get some of that element of the introvert is pushed into doing things they maybe wouldn't always do because the extrovert is there. And so it's just an interesting dynamic to explore too. So if you know of anything that has those kind of dynamics, I'd love to hear about it. But yeah, especially if you've read either of these and want to have a discussion about them, I think that'd be super fun. But I think that's all I've got for now. This is the Harper signing out.